Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast, hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and my fellow Forest fanatic from across the Atlantic, Richard Spray. I would quite happily leave that on all day because that's an all-time classic. And I thought, I wanted to kind of go a little bit more Chicago house for the intro this morning for this particular reason. That. And I thought, okay, let's go with something that I love. So, Richard, how are you over in Oklahoma?
Man, so happy, excited to have Chief on, representing Chi-Town. So appreciate him coming on. Yeah, I'm wide awake, man. I got a full 8 hours. That never happens.
Amazing. Richard is normally, we are going out a bit later than we perhaps normally do. I'm happy to do that. It's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon here in the UK, 7 a.m. Central Standard Time. So today we do continue our series of the One With, and we are delighted to have in the guest chair someone who may have only been a Forest fan for a few years or so, but definitely rivals anyone in the fan base for passion, commitment, and dedication to the Garibaldi. He's a man who has a huge presence in Chicago with his sports commentary for the renowned Barstool Sports, and we are thrilled that he has been able to join us here with us today. So please do welcome to Talking Reds, Mr. Barstool Chief. Chief, it's great to have you with us. Thank you so much for stepping into the guest chair. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here, guys. Thanks for having me. That was quite the intro, so I appreciate that too.
Well, we like to try and make people feel, welcome and warm. And I know, like we were saying off air, that it's a bit cold over in Chicago at the moment. So hopefully we're going to warm your heart a little bit over the next hour. We're going to be talking Forest and a whole load of other things as well. But before we get into any of that, we always kick things off by asking our guests to tell us their own Forest story. The hows and whys that they became a Forest fan. So take it away.
Yeah, I got very lucky. So I have a brother who's 10 years younger than me, and he was trying to finish school, and he was a lacrosse player, and he decided, I'm going to go across to England to finish my degree. I'm going to play lacrosse in England. And I'm like, all right, whatever. So he went to Nottingham. And his plan was, I'm going to go to school in Nottingham, and then I'm going to use that as a jumping point to see the rest of Europe. I'm going to go to Scotland and the Netherlands and, see London and Ireland and just go everywhere. And then COVID happened. So he just really invested himself and spent all his time in Nottingham and fell in love with it, including Nottingham Forest. So he went to a game, loved it, but he was a poor college kid. So he was like, I have to be able to go do that again. How do I do this on the cheap? He got a job ripping tickets at the City Ground. So that he would miss the first 10 minutes of every game, getting everybody to their seat. And then he would go up and find an empty seat. And he would send me these videos of the chanting. And then he would send me like, oh, you got to watch Do You Believe in Miracles? This Brian Clough movie. And he would just send me all these little tidbits. And then I just started like following them. So it's like back then, they were in the championship. So if they were on ESPN Plus, I would watch them. And then most of the time they weren't. So I'd be like, what's another $6 to Marinakis to watch it on Forest TV? And it became something where it was something that we could connect on and talk about. And then the more I learned about Forest, the more I fell in love. And so that first year they finished, 17th in the championship. And I was thrilled because I felt like I had a genuine connection to a club, which is something I always wanted because I've loved soccer. I call it soccer. I've loved soccer since I was a little kid. First team I fell in love with was the men's national team, the US 94 World Cup. And I've been hooked ever since, but I just nothing ever really felt authentic to me in terms of being a fan. So it's like maybe I'll be a Spurs fan. It doesn't feel right. I don't want to be a United fan or one of the other big six clubs. Like that felt like cheating. Like I'm a Chicago guy. I want a degree of pain and misery and shame and embarrassment. And being a fan of Arsenal, it felt like I'm going to make myself born on third base, which is, a United States expression where it's just like that didn't sit right with me. So I'm like, you know what? It's going to be Forest. 17th in the championship, whatever. I feel it in my bones. They'll probably never go up, but they have great history and these great passionate fans. And that's something I want to be a part of. So I just got into it. Start the next year 0-7 or whatever it was with Chris Hughton. And then the magical year that was Steve Cooper. So that rocket ship was incredible. And I started like doing little videos online and the miracle run, the promotion run, and getting under the skin of Derby fans, which I loved. And Dane Murphy, who was the CEO at the time, he and I played high school sports against each other. We were in the same league.
Oh, wow.
So like he and I kind of through the internet connected. And so then it's like, all right, you got another kind of a personal touch there. And I ended up flying over to Wembley for the promotion final. And then, I would happen to be in New York. Like Dan White and Carl Hudson, who are two huge Forest fans. They're kind of the leaders or two of the three leaders, I would say, of Nottingham Forest North America supporters group. And so when they had the playoff against Sheffield, I was in New York for work, and they, really, I met Dan one other time, but they kind of, Dan's become like a good friend of mine. I talk to Dan almost every day. and so he kind of like, it's like another person to like help me like in my Forest fandom. And it's been great. It's exactly what I wanted. I never anticipated a promotion. But then once you're in the Premier League and every game is, I haven't missed a game, and it's just been great. And I've made it over to Nottingham now. I went to City Ground last April for the first time, and I'm probably going to do it again this spring. And it's hard to explain, but it's like if I were going to rank my teams, like honestly, because we have a lot of sports here, I think it would probably go. Hockey is my favorite sport, and I hate the Blackhawks right now, but I'd still say that they're number one. And I love American football. I hate the Bears right now, but they're probably still number two. And then Forest is past like the Cubs and the Bulls. Like I do not miss a Nottingham Forest game. And I find myself reading more about Forest than the other teams like combined. And it's just, I'm all in. And I feel very fortunate that my brother ended up in Nottingham, because he could have ended up in some, what if he ended up in Derby? What if he ended up in Sheffield? What if he ended up in Leicester? Like, it would have been horrible. Like it probably wouldn't have stuck. But because it was Forest and the history, that logo is great. I love everything about this club. It's a perfect fit for me, and I'll Forest till I die.
That's amazing to hear. And I'm going to come back to some of those points you just made in just a moment. I want to quickly say good morning, good afternoon to NFC Jules. Welcome, Chief. Top pundit, sign him up as a regular. Well, we might just do nice. That. Lefty says, afternoon, lads. Tim Eason is saying hi from sunny Spain. Ian Whittington is over in Canada. Good morning to you, Ian. How you doing? And Dr. Anna is watching just before afternoon surgery. So she's looking forward to the game tonight. Michael Oliver is the ref, and he was the ref at Anfield, so hopefully a lucky omen. He's probably our best ref as well. So that might go in our favour. I'm going to hand over to Richard in a moment, because I think he's got one or two things to ask you. But I want to touch on just one thing you were talking about then, which was the passion and how it kind of draws you in and how much you become invested. Because for someone like me who grew up in the UK, in England, and was introduced to football very early, and Forest has always been in my blood. I've got it from my dad. I've kind of grown up with it. When I hear you speak, you're just as passionate about the team as I am. You've come into it like in the last 3 or 4 years. And we had Bruce from Texas who became a Forest fan whilst we were in the championship as well. Can you put your finger on it? I mean, maybe you can't. Maybe it's an impossible question. But can you just put your finger on what it is about Nottingham Forest that makes you feel that way? Because for me, it's so many different things: the family connection, the memories that I've got from going many, many times over the year. But you've touched on obviously the Dane link that as well that kind of helped along. And do you think social media's helped you as well? Because obviously that can sweep you up a little bit, can't it, with getting involved in a club like Forest? But can you put your finger on it at all, do you think?
I think it's a combination of things, and some of the things are deeper, like you're saying, and I think some of the things are simple. Like I think the logo grabs you. It's awesome. It's the best logo in all of European football. I don't even know who I would vote as number 2. Like
it's been voted number 1 many, many times.
What's that?
The logo, the badge has been voted as the number 1 many, many times in many different polls.
I believe it, and not just from this podcast, right? From okay. Some other clubs too. Okay.
I mean, across the board, and in like when they've done polls in magazines or stuff like that, the Forest badge has quite often come out on top.
It's perfect. It's like with the Trent right there. It's great, and then you have as an American, and they have that Robin Hood movie or several of them. But I always, when they lose, I'll often post that clip from the cartoon where it's the fox Robin Hood being like, "Don't worry, there'll be happiness again in Nottingham someday. You'll see." And but so like I love that movie as a kid. So I think there's a subconscious maybe like brand recognition just from knowing like the Robin Hood story, or at least the Hollywood version of it. That was like, I know that name in a way that I wouldn't have that same like immediate, I know that name about Leeds or Sunderland or something like that. Like I didn't know anything about Nottingham, but I felt like I did. It's like, oh yeah, Nottingham. Yeah, of course. And so I think those are like 2 kind of small things, but then it is like when you learn about City Ground. And, I was lucky enough to do like this great tour of the museum. I think it was actually right before it opened with Will, who works for Forest. So, but when you like the I Believe in Miracles, the Brian Clough movie, it's like, this guy was unbelievable. Like, I wish I was alive for this guy, like giving the all-time best press conferences. And there is something about how it does feel Forest. I feel like they have an outsized voice on social media where it's just like you guys, it's like, and there's the other one with Chris where it's like Forest all over the world. Like feels like there's so many Forest podcasts, and there is this international fan base that became apparent to me when I started tweeting about it in a way that I don't know that other clubs have that. Maybe they do, but like, I don't know if Leeds or Cardiff or, I don't think that they have these fans pockets. LA, Vancouver, there's a guy in the Bahamas. It's just like there's Forest fans everywhere. I was in Nashville 2 years ago, and I was upstairs, just kind of like looking down at like this crowd, and I see 2 guys in a Forest, each wearing Forest jerseys. So I just like yell at them and do like a "You Reds," and like they yell it right back. And so it is like this. There is like this kind of, it feels like it's a community club in a way where the other ones, especially the big 6, they feel very corporate. And like we've started a soccer podcast at Barstool now, and we have a Manchester City guy, 2 Arsenal guys, one of them who is from Zimbabwe and has family in England. He's loved art. Like the only thing he cares about is Arsenal. So he's legit. But the other guy picked it up like a year ago, like right around this time a year ago. And it's just like, that never felt right to me. So Forest, I want the white, I'm glad we're not in a relegation battle anymore, but I kind of loved like that white knuckle where it's like, all right, we got Arsenal. I had a wedding and I was like in the bar. And I was standing up in the wedding. Forest was playing Arsenal, trying to stay up a couple of years ago, first year in the Premier League. It's just like, can we do pictures? Give me 5 minutes before we have to get on the bus and do these pictures. And we just all watch Forrest in the hotel bar in all of our suits. And it was, it was great. It was great. There is just, Forrest is magic. I don't know how else to describe it other than that.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I probably maybe chatted with you a little bit. As a Detroit Lions fan, I'm very acutely aware of pain up until the last 2 years. I think my whole existence has been pain, so I'm very familiar with that. But I wanted to kind of jump ahead. I know Greg will probably want to talk about some of the Barstool stuff and your involvement with that and how you got into all that, which is amazing. I'm curious, just, us both being in the States, and I talked to Greg Mitchell a little bit about this. I was like, just the regionality of sports, and just it's a very sort of immersive experience and a very community oriented thing. And you touched on it a little bit with Forrest. It's 100% that way. It's amazing how people can connect in that community across with social media now, where it wasn't that way when I was a kid, right? I mean, you kind of talk to people in your general locale. You didn't really talk to other people outside of that and know if there was other people outside of that, but that would be supporting the same teams you did. What is the experience like from your perspective when it comes to, I mean, you've been plenty of sporting events in Chicago in particular, and very passionate sports town, incredibly supportive of their teams. It's still a bucket list for me to go to Wrigley Field because I loved the Cubs as a kid. So what's that been like in terms of the comparison between the two, and how you can kind of articulate for, those who are in the UK who maybe haven't had that experience, what it's like to be in there, not so much a us versus them sort of scenario, but more so just the experience and what that's like between the football match in the UK versus a
so you're talking like
American
actual like
match.
Game day in arena experience.
Yeah, like just the whole process.
Yeah, this is something America needs to get better at. I would say that I don't think anything really compares to like that Wembley game was incredible, and then I went to the Wolves game, and that was a 2-2 draw. But I sat in the upper Bridgeford, so right above the away fans. So when it's guys are just, back and forth, a chance, and that it's something that I don't know how it happens. I genuinely don't know. No one's ever really been able to explain it to me. Like, how do you get thousands of people chanting the same reply? Like when they would do the Man City back and forth, when it was like, you won't be alive, you won't be alive. That whole, like, how does that, I don't know how that happens. I'm sure there's a system, but the soccer and the sporting over there feels like it's more like the fans make the game. Like you can lose and it can be an awesome, memorable timeout, where I went to the Bears-Packers game where they lost on a blocked field goal, and I had to basically walk home. And I'm like, why did I even come? Why did I do this? This was absolutely miserable. And where I feel like if I went to a Forest game, maybe there's a novelty factor too. So maybe I'm a little bit biased. But if they lost, I'd be like, the chants were awesome. The banter was great. I didn't get to have a beer in my seat, which is insane rule that I can't wrap my head around in England, that they don't let you drink in your seat. But it's like I think I would still find it like a great timeout. I'd be disappointed and angry, but my voice would be hoarse, and I would have been like, that was a good time. It was worth the money. So I do think I think it's a better fan experience, and it's the fans that make it a better experience more times than not in England, where we are solely reliant upon what's going on the field. And the other thing, and I think this is just about soccer versus our sports, everybody in the stadium is locked onto that ball the entire time. When you go to games in the States, it's the Jumbotron, and they got some mascot doing something stupid, and there's a break and there's a commercial break. So you're talking to somebody, the game's back on. So it's not as like this collective of like we're all in this together. It's more of like a social event often here, as opposed to we're all going to the game to cheer for the Reds.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some stuff online, and in fact, I've got a couple of videos I want to play just to kind of highlight the comparisons between the USA and the UK in terms of the chanting aspect, because
fight and win. Yeah, we're not
good.
Fight and win. Fight and win! Come on, Seattle! Come on, Seattle!
I mean, it just looks so civilized, and the guy on the foghorn is really passionately trying to get them going. But it's just from a Englishman's point of view, who goes to the football. We're used to this. So, I mean, I just thought I'd play that because, I mean, the the energy and the noise at an English football game, an English soccer game, as you call it, is like none other. And I've spoken to Richard, asked him about the kind of experience previously, and he said the same kind of thing as you've just said, that everyone's kind of locked in at a football match here in the UK. Everyone's on that, and the crowd are as one. It's almost like a breathing, unified body of energy that works together. Whereas in the States, it's like, oh yeah, okay, let's have a hot dog, and everyone's chatting about business or something else like that. And and again, that isn't to in any way, shape, or form, diminish the sporting spectacle that they're at. But it's just a very different. It's just a very different approach. Yeah. I don't want to sound like I'm being disrespectful because that's not my aim at all. But it is just so interesting to see the difference. When it comes to US soccer, like the MLS, have you got a team in the MLS? Have you been to any MLS matches?
Yes. I've been to Chicago Fire matches, but it's difficult. So I do believe, so they play at the same stadium as the Bears, and they just don't have the same level of passion, and they'll tarp off like the entire upper deck, but it's like, the stadium is like too big to really generate any noise for that amount of people. So it's just not a great experience. Now our friend Carl Hudson he works for the Chicago Fire now. So I will be supporting them more boisterously next year and try to get to a few more games. Cause I'd like to care about them the way that I care about other teams. It's just hard because it's like the 10th best league in the world too. So it's like, what are you really rooting for? And then I know there are like pockets of people who are insane about the MLS. Like I know, like my best friend lives in Columbus, Ohio. He has no soccer background at all. He was a teammate of mine playing hockey, but he takes his kids to the Columbus Crew games, and he's like, these are awesome. Like they have a tradition of singing an Elvis song. So I think like Seattle's known for having good fans. Vancouver, Portland, Atlanta, for whatever reason, gets a ton of people out. Columbus, but you have hyper passionate fans, but nobody knows they exist, and it's just not that good of a product at this point. So I would like to be a Fire fan. They haven't grabbed me the way that Forest has, an ocean away. But that's just the reality of the situation. And the only thing and maybe Richard can speak to this too, major college football in the United States is probably the closest thing to the English soccer event. And I would say that they do like the pregame pomp and circumstance better than anything in the world. The bands, the cheerleaders, the songs, like the food. It is a great going to college football in the United States. If you go to like Oklahoma or Notre Dame or Wisconsin or Texas, like if you go to one of these bigger anywhere in the SEC, it's awesome. It is an unmatched game day experience. But there's only 7 of them, 7 home games a year. If you're a fan of Oklahoma, like you get 7 games, whereas with the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup, you're probably getting at least 20. in England. So they do it every week. It's a little bit different, but I do want to give some respect to college football, that we're not just all sitting on our hands and eating hot dogs at every sporting event.
Yeah, it definitely feels like the NFL is kind of more along the lines of, and there's still passionate people there, and there's still
Totally.
tailgating and all that stuff for sure. Like you know that better than anybody. But yeah, it was funny because I had the same conversation with Greg Mitchell, because he asked me that same question, because he started getting into the South Carolina Gamecocks. Like that's been, yeah. So he went straight into, yeah, exactly. He went straight into the SEC stuff. You referenced that, but yeah, I totally agree with that, man. And there's like a lot of singing and a lot of different things we do through the course of the game too.
Yep.
It's probably not as inventive as the stuff you see in the UK, like you saw. But I do want to kind of get back to I want to go to your Barstool stuff. So Barstool's amazing. A huge fan of Barstool. How did that all come about? Like, what got you into it? Because with like the advent of social media, there's so many people. I mean, look at us doing a podcast right now. We got no training in this. We got no background in this. It's amazing how much that's sort of. Oh, see, that's why I was so curious, because I know like Josh Pate, for example. Love Josh Pate. Same thing, kind of self-made guy in terms of getting into the media space. So how did that come about for you, and especially getting into Barstool?
So I went to a college north of Chicago, and for whatever reason, there's a ton of kids from Massachusetts at the school. So my best friend from college was a kid from Massachusetts, and big sports guy, very similar sense of humor to me. And he's like, you got to read this thing called Barstool. I'm like, what's that? So this is back in like 2005. Like it had just started. So Portnoy, my boss and the founder of the company, used to hand out a physical newspaper, a free newspaper at train stops in Boston, and like kind of sold ads through that, but was making no money and was really hustling. And then after he would do that, he'd put up basically a PDF of the newspaper on barstoolsports.com. And that's what I would read. And I thought it was hilarious and awesome. So I would look forward to it. It would update every 2 weeks, but I would read it every 2 weeks. And so then, the company and the website grew and evolved over time. And then they announced that they're starting a Barstool Chicago. And so at this point, this is now like 2012 or 2013. And so I was working for a different marketing company, and one of our clients was an offshore gambling site. So one of my jobs was to create a website that would draw traffic to the gambling. So I modeled it after Barstool because I had complete autonomy. So I had a year or year and a half worth of writing samples on my own site. So when they announced that Barstool Chicago was coming, I had stuff ready to go and submitted it. And the way it worked back then is that you would have like one person who kind of like was like the figurehead of the city, which was Big Cat for Chicago. And then you had Portnoy in Boston. And then you had people covering the different teams. So I'm like, I was a college hockey guy, played pretty good hockey. And I had this writing sample. So I'm like, hey, like, I'd love to be your Blackhawks guy. And the Blackhawks were awesome back then. They were in their peak of winning Stanley, championships. So I started, Big Cat, I emailed him, and he's like, all right, yep, like you can start right in the beginning of the playoffs. And, why don't we give it 2 weeks? And if people like you, you can stay. So that was April of 2013. So I'm still here. So I did it for free until like 2016. I was just, something I enjoyed doing it. And it was a way to kind of like stay involved in the internet. It was fun. And then in 2016, they started giving like a little stipend, but I never had any even desire or thought of doing this full time. Like I had a whole different career doing beverage packaging, which I actually liked that job. And then I started a podcast in the summer of 18 with the other guys who were doing we had a Cubs guy, a Bears guy, and a White Sox guy. We started a podcast, and that podcast started doing pretty well. So we're making a little bit more money, but I'm like, this is not sustainable. I can't live off of what we're making. So I was looking for other jobs. I accepted a job where I was going to move to Portland, Oregon. And I was going to move there January of 2019. Accepted that job in December of 18. Probably 10 days later, Portnoy offered us all full time. So then I was like, call the people in Oregon. I'm not coming. And so I dove kind of headfirst into this, and that. So our first day was, January 1st, 2019. And, we're still at it. My contract is up at the end of this year, but I feel I'll probably get another one. So we're good. Yeah.
That's
but
amazing.
It's been great. And I love Dave. Dave's the best boss I've ever had. And now we have this huge office in Chicago with a golf simulator, full court basketball, like restaurant style kitchen. It's knowing, because I've been reading it since it started basically in 2005, to see what it's become is unbelievable.
Incredible.
I think Dave Portnoy is an absolute legend, because the One Bite Pizza reviews are just something I became really obsessed with. I got to be honest with you, I just sit and watch them one after another. I was like, this is like just weird. Why am I getting so obsessed with
I don't
one bite
know.
and the rules?
I don't know.
I don't get it.
Yeah,
it's weird. But it was
why do I
content.
care about a pizza place outside of Pittsburgh? Like, I don't.
Do you know what I
care.
mean?
I'm never gonna go there, but they're great.
Yeah, and I'm like thinking, he's going to give a 7.8. He's going to give a 7.8, and he comes in like a 7.4. Oh man! So no, I love all that. And look, El Presidente is a bit of a legend. Have you guys all got nicknames? And how do you get them? How do you get your nickname? Where did Chief come from?
So this was back when I first started in 2013. I didn't really want to have my full name out there because I had a whole different career. I didn't want like my boss somehow seeing like, why is Ryan Brandell publishing an article at 11 a.m.? Like, you're supposed to be working around the clock. So I wanted to keep that, anonymous. And I had my freshman year of college, I had a out of town girlfriend. She was a very cute girl. And when she came up to visit the first weekend, my freshman year, she leaves, she shuts the door. I walk back in. I was living in a quad, 4 guys to a room. And they're like, how do you have a girlfriend that looks like that? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I'm handsome and charming. Like, of course. Like, what's that? That's like insulting. And then the local high school of our college, it's called the Scouts. And it was homecoming weekend, and they had like we do this tradition where we paint all the windows in the stores with the high school mascot. So it was everywhere. It was on everybody's mind. And my buddy was like, you're not good looking. Like, you look like the mascot, Chief. And because my side profile, I got like a pronounced nose. And so like that was kind of a college nickname, was Chief. And so then, like no one was calling me that for a while after graduation. But I thought I knew my buddies would be reading my stuff on Barstool. So I was like kind of a little like wink at them to be Chief. And that's the story. So everybody has a different story.
Incredible.
No,
that's mine.
Absolutely love it. Time is moving away from us slightly. So let's move back to Forest. Mm-hmm. And we asked you to come up with your personal favorite all-time Forest 11. And obviously, you've only been a fan for 4 or 5 years or something like that. So your pool of players was going to be probably from that era, of mm-hmm. course. I'll read them out, and then you can tell us why you picked one or two. You've gone for Brice Samba in goal, left back of Ola Aina, right back of Jed Spence, back to centre backs Murillo and Joe Worrell. Great to see Joe Worrell getting selected. Midfield 2 of Ryan Yates and James Garner. And then you kind of went 2-2-2-2, but it kind of Gibbs, White and Johnson just in front of those, and then Chris Wood and Lewis Graben. So listen, you can't. We never argue and can never argue with anybody's selections because it's a personal thing. Why Joe Worrell? Why have you picked Joe in your team?
Well, he was the captain of the first team that I fell in love with, and he's a local guy, and it seems like a good lad. My brother said he used to see him out at bars and stuff around Nottingham, said he was just like a legend, like a great guy. And he was, to me, like that promotion year, he was, they played that back three with, him and Cook, and he was just he was a wall, and he could play the ball a little bit. And there's just like, and this is the same reason why I fell in love with Steve Cooper too. Steve Cooper's my manager, okay, for this 11. And again, I wouldn't take this the wrong way either. But Steve Cooper and Joe Worrell, when I close my eyes and think of what an English guy looks like, It's them. Okay. So Joe Worrell to me was just like, he was like he's one of our own. He's one of our own. And I loved him. Great captain of the promotion team. And like, there's just so many like great memories where he was at the center of, and he has to be in this team.
I couldn't agree more. It's a nice blend there of the promotion team and some of the current players. And Lewis Grabban back at the club in a coaching capacity at the moment. You've gone for him up top with Chris Wood.
Yeah, same thing. So Woody's put in a ton, and I got a soft spot for Taiwo too, and even Keenan Davis. But those two, I mean, Chris Wood, I think is now tied for all-time leader in Premier League goals for Forest.
Until tonight, he is. Until tonight.
Yeah, there we go. Then he's on there by himself, and and he has a goal against Man City. So let's not forget that. But with Grabban, it was like the old man, that beard, and it was just like it felt like you just, when they needed one, he would put one in, and he was a leader without the armband. I loved him. I'm glad he's back with the club, but he was one of my first favorite players with Forest.
And Ola Aina, I mean, he seems to have really just that character. I mean, he's just taken the club, or the fans of the club, have taken him to their hearts, I'm trying to say, because he's so bubbly, he's infectious, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's a great quote. Okay, so where he had the goal a few weeks ago, and they're like, "Well, why did you shoot it?" He goes, "I was knackered." He's like, he's like, if it goes in, it goes in. If it goes into the Trent, he doesn't care. He just needed to stop and play. So he has the great quotes, his locker room videos with the dancing and stuff. Like he's just, he's got the big smile, and he's a dog. Like he's an absolute dog. So he gets forward. I remember when they were playing City a couple of years ago, he absolutely dusted Kyle Walker. I think that was kind of the beginning of the end for Kyle Walker.
I agree.
Yeah. And it was that moment. Like nobody really knew it at that time, but his form looks awful now. And it's like, if you go back, it started with Ola Aina putting him in his back pocket. And so he's a great player, great personality. Get that long-term deal done. I need this guy here for a while.
We couldn't agree more. We hope it's signed, sealed, and delivered. There you go. Chiefs Reds, fantastic team. Thank you so much for putting that together. We have got time now to take a very quick break. We'll be back for more chat after this.
This York shop is a cheese lover's paradise. The Cheese Trader is home to an array of fine British cheeses. Not only selling it, but offering an epic cheesy street food menu too. Guests can choose from a main dish and then select all the different types of cheese they'd like on top, alongside an array of other toppings. We tried their loaded fries and posh cheese toasties, both of which were absolutely smothered in gorgeous melted cheddar. We even chose a whole camembert to top our fries, which was so tasty, like a cheesy salt and pepper dish. The posh cheese on toast was some of the best toast we've ever had, with so many amazing flavours to it that perfectly paired with the cheese, tucked away just off Grape Lane. This is the perfect spot for a great lunch.
As ever, Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader, a Forest fan, sponsors our show. He's busy with Christmas orders. So don't forget, 10% off when you quote Talking Reds. Chief, next time you're in the UK, if you get a chance to go to York, you've got to hop in and see Stu Freestone and grab some cheese. We'll have a hamper ready for you, free of charge. Don't worry on that. We'll sort you out. So honestly,
brother,
it's such a great guy.
I like cheese. I know my way around cheese.
we know we're the same. Just want to quickly say hi to Bruce, who's with us from Texas. Hey, Bruce. And Pat Brett mentions, not in that message. Where's it gone? There it is. He mentions that Penn Forest Football Club out in Pittsburgh, they did adopt the Forest badge. I've seen that as well, actually. I've seen that logo. So if you look up Penn Forest Football Club from Pittsburgh on Google, you'll find the Forest badge has been kind of adopted by them and twisted around a little bit. Danscape regular is with us as well. So yeah, if you've got any more questions or comments, please do pop them into the chat. Quick one from Bruce. What's Chief's favorite pizza place in Chicago?
That is a very tough question. So
One bite. Everyone knows the rules.
one bite, everyone knows the rules. I'll probably say Phil's for like Chicago Tavern style down on the south side is probably my number one for that. I do like New York style and New Haven style a little bit better. So we have a couple places that do a good take on that. Zaza's and probably we'll leave Zaza's number one. But it is like, this is a question that starts fights, so I almost never answer it.
Well, we'll leave it there. We don't want to fight because we've only got time to do this now.
The lightning round.
Yeah, unabashedly fans, American Institution. Hopefully you're a fan too. I know Matt Davis is a fan, and
growing up, so
that's awesome. Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So we'll start with this. What was your first Forest match live?
In person?
Yeah.
The Wembley promotion game.
That's insane.
That was my first one. So shout out Dane Murphy was able to sort out tickets for me, my brother. I went with Dan White, New York Forest supporter. We had a group of like 8 guys. That was my first real time to London too. So I think I was only there for 72 hours, but it was awesome. Yeah, great time. And then my first city ground trip was last year for the Wolves game.
Amazing. Favorite Forest player of all time?
Yatesy. It has to be Ryan.
You called it, man. That was like your prophetic moment. He called it in that Sheffield United game. Yeah. I remember you saying that on Forest All Over, and then lo and behold, he did. Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. If Yatesy scored, we're in the lake, and it was
I
think that was April, so it wasn't real warm yet. But it was great. So he's like, I love hockey, and I love like the little rat pests. And if he were born in Canada or here, he would be a hockey player. He would be my favorite hockey player too. Like, he has that kind of a mentality where he's a little extra elbow. Well, he's just he's just a pain. He's a pest. And I love guys like that. So I'll love Yates forever. That's my cap.
That's amazing. Awesome.
Yep.
Okay. What player in Forest history would you like to see on the current squad?
I love Brennan Johnson. It broke my heart when he had to go, and
you want him back.
What?
You want him back?
I would love him back. And Alanga, Callum Hudson-Odoi, like, they've been fine. I would say Brennan's pace is unmatched, and I do think that him on this team, on a team that plays on the counter like we do more than Spurs, I think he would feel right at home. So I would say him, and then I know Jed hasn't done anything in for a while, but I think Jed in 10 years will look back and say the biggest mistake he ever made was leaving Steve Cooper in Forest, because I think his career would be on a different path if he had stayed here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Your favorite away or third kit?
I don't really like the kits this year. So maybe last year's. I have one that's the Yatesy, that's kind of like the pink and purple or pink and or peach.
The third kit last year.
Yeah, third kit last year. I do have a soft spot for the one that was like yellow and orange highlighter yellow from the promotion year. So I'll say that one. I'll say that one. But I think they could do better with their kits. I'll say that.
I agree.
Greg was saying the same thing. What is your favorite Forest moment or memory? It's probably pretty
obvious.
Your first one ever.
I want to go back and change my Brennan Johnson answer. It's got to be Brice Samba.
Oh yeah.
I miss him every day. I will go on TikToks and just type in Brice Samba, and you'll get like he's been great in League One, obviously and he was cool. Another guy who was like a rat and a pest and bothered everybody. Occasional red card, who cares? I love it. So that the shootout against Sheffield, and we were in Smithfield Hall in New York City for that.
Oh, wow.
Incredible game. And Samba, with the water bottle, and like there's this video of me jumping when they win it, and my belly comes out, and we have this big mosh pit of guys, hugging and cheering and dancing. It was great. So that's probably my favorite Forest memory, was beating Sheffield to go to Wembley.
Fantastic. So I know this is a tough one. If you weren't a Forest fan, what club would you support?
None. I mean, the thing about
Chicago Fire.
Yeah, but this is the thing about me, and because I've seen this as like a popular question on TikTok, where it's like, you go up to an Everton fan and be like, if you couldn't root for Everton, who would you root for? And like, no one ever says Liverpool, right? But for me, like I kind of ran this experiment. Like I've been watching the Premier League since it's been on NBC here, which is what, 2014, I feel like is,
it's been a while.
10 years at least that they've had, pretty good coverage here in America. And like, you dip your toes into other clubs and it's like, I'm going to try to be in Newcastle. Like when I was a kid, I loved Alan Shearer, but like, I was never like grabbed by Newcastle. So the answer is none. So Forest till I die. And I would say I wasn't born with Forest, but I got baptized with Forest. There's been nobody else, and there never will be.
Yep, 100%. If Forest could sign one player from a non-top 6 side, who would it be?
So outside the traditional top 6,
Villa,
Wolves,
Fulham, Wolves,
Everton, Newcastle, maybe.
Has to be in the Premier League. I can't say like Gyökeres or something, like a big Swedish striker up there.
Oh yeah, they're a non-top 6 side.
All right, so. Gyökeres. That would be a guy to have. It's just
we should have got him when he was being sold from Coventry. He was the player to get at that time.
Cooper had history with him too at Swansea, but
right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. Very good.
All right. Based on what they do on the pitch right now, who is more valuable to Forest, Morgan Gibbs-White or Murillo?
I think
could be value in terms of play or money.
I think it's Gibbs-White. I think Gibbs-White is more important to Forest than Murillo. I could envision a scenario where they replace Murillo more easily, where it's hard to find those playmaking. I do think Gibbs-White could be a great number 8 too. Just kind of a box to box, and he plays with such passion and the creativity. He's great when we're counterattacking. Like when he has options left and right and he's carrying the ball, it's like it makes the hair on my neck stand up because you think about it. Like he's so dangerous. And I love the way he plays the game with that intensity. So Murillo's awesome, but if I had to get rid of one of them, I would be keeping Gibbs-White.
Very good.
Last question. Forest win the Premier League, but are then relegated into the Championship for the next 25 years. Would you take it?
I didn't hate the Championship. I didn't hate it.
That's how you found us.
That's where you started.
Yeah. Here's the real answer. It depends on what kind of US TV rights the Championship has. So I love having Peacock, and I know every game is going to be available to me. Where that was not the case with ESPN Plus and Forest TV, and the Forest TV feed was, for being honest, was horrible. So, Brett,
he's not wrong.
I think that's true. We get every game.
Yeah, Bruce is in accord with that. So, lightning round. Well done.
Okay,
thanks, Chief.
I am so good at lightning rounds.
It's the 4th of December. So I did put it out on my socials, but here comes day 4 of the Talking Reds Nottingham Forest Advent Calendar. So for those listening, the person behind the door today was none other than Jota Silva. He worked his way through the leagues in Portugal, and we signed him from Vitória Guimarães in the summer. He is a 25-year-old with 1 cap for Portugal, which he earned in March this year. As we all know, he operates either on the wing or in the number 10, and he's become a massive fan favourite already. with his terrier-like attitude, his willingness to get stuck in. And as I've said time and time again, no one goes down better than Jota Silva. Chief, what can you say about Jota Silva that perhaps hasn't been said already?
Not much. That was a pretty good intro. I like him. I feel like he can kind of play, like we saw him a little bit as a 10. What was that, the Arsenal game he came in and played as a 10, and eventually subbed him over. I like him. I think I like him better as a sub. It seems like that energy that he brings, and I said this when I did Forest Focus too, where it's like that's got to be very hard to sustain for 90 minutes, and I feel like we kind of did see that in the Ipswich game, where it didn't have the same intensity, quite the same spark that he does off the bench. So I like him. I like him as a sub.
See, I find that interesting because I have a different opinion. I love him as a sub, but I think that when you come and play in the Premier League for the first time, it takes a little bit getting used to. Mm-hmm. It is a very fast league. And to really get going, you need to get a run of games starting in the Premier League, get going. Similar when Callum Hudson-Odoi joined us from Chelsea. He came to us off the back of having injury issues and being out of the team and being quite stagnated with his starts. And people were wondering, is he going to be able to cope? But once he got a run in the team and he was, playing week in, week out, we started to see the best of him. He scored all those goals for us last season. So I think that Jota Silva needs a run of games before we start seeing the very best from him. And even if he doesn't last beyond 65, 70 minutes, I don't have a problem with that, only because we now have 5 substitutions. Back in the day when it was just 1 or 2, then it would be a problem. But when you can make 5 changes, and I know that a lot of managers now call them the finishers rather than the subs. So if he's putting in a shift for 65, 70 minutes, and then he's being swapped out for, say, an Alanga to come off. And I like Alanga off the bench. I liked it when he came off the bench in previous games where he's had an impact. So I do see where you're coming from. He's only kind of had that substitute appearance kind of impact so far. I've got a feeling he might start tonight against Man City. How do you see the game tonight then, Chief? We've got Manchester City tonight, and then we've got Manchester United on Saturday. So back-to-back games in Manchester. How do you see tonight's game going?
It's like I'm guarded. I'm guarded about this game because it does feel like City is broken right now, where Pep's doing like the weird, we got 6 titles to the fans of Liverpool. Liverpool could have won that game 6-0.
Right.
Just nothing is going right there. I do think Forest will frustrate him. I think it's going to be a 1-0 kind of game. I don't know who's getting the goal. But I don't – it's not going to be like – I remember we were doing a show when they played City the first time when we got promoted, and it was like every time I looked over, it was a goal. Goal, 6-0. So it's like how far Forest have improved and the step back that City have taken. It feels like if you were ever going to win on the road against City, this is the time. And that makes me nervous. So I'm trying not to get my hopes up, but I think Forest will be right there with them. Very competitive game.
It would be very Forest, or the Forest of the past, to be the ones that can't quite get a result when it's the best time possibly to play City in 10 years. We did our Man City preview a couple of days ago, and we were talking about that.
What did you say? What was your lineup? Are you playing a back 5, or are you kind of going for it?
Well, to be honest with you, we spoke about both, and I thought that sticking with the back 4 with Moreno coming in and playing with the 4-2-3-1 would be the way to go, because normally I would have said go to a back 3 or back 5, as you call it, because that's a good way to set up against Man City. But I kind of feel like we could be playing into their own hands potentially. Richard came up with a really good team that had a back 3 with progressive fullbacks. I think the midfield is the key, whether it's a back 4 or a back 5. The midfield is the key. I think Dominguez has to play tonight. Dominguez and Yates, we're going to be without the ball more than we are with the ball, I think. So the out position work that's got to go in. I think Anderson, for me, should start on the bench, because he and Gibbs White should play together in nearly every game. But I just don't think that this is one of those games. I think that because of who we're playing against and the style of play, that I want to see Dominguez and Yates in the midfield. And Jota Silva playing, and We've talked about Alanga playing on the left as well. And I know there has been a potential team that's leaked out that is something along those lines as well.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
I've only been awake for an hour. So
yeah, Wolfie on Forest Fan TV sent it to me as well, and he has since tweeted it out on the Forest Fan TV page. And his team that he suggests is a definite for tonight is Sells in goal, Moreno left back, Murillo, Milenkovic centre backs, Aina right back, Dominguez Yates in the midfield, Alanga left, Gibbs White in the 10, Jota on the right, Wood up top. I haven't got a problem with that. I like that team. That's quite similar to how I felt it should be. But Richard, you talked about a back three. You can take Chief for your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think similar, kind of harkening back to what we've done in the past, right? I mean, we're a different team now. You referenced that, but with the idea that they're going to retain possession, they're going to stress us when it comes to, especially in around the box and in the penalty box, with how well that they manage passing within tight spaces. And it's like you just want to kind of pack that up a little bit and retain that defensive position. But part of the problem we've seen with that, unfortunately, has been that Aina has not been as advancing as he normally would be. Moreno does do that, so you could see why Moreno would come in. But I kind of liked, so that's how I posed that with Anderson on the team, with in the midfield, in his normal position, pretty much, with Yates in his normal position, with Morgan in his normal position, and I think I have input. Did I put Dominguez out right? Now I'm trying to remember now. No, I had Jota, didn't I?
Yeah,
I had Jota on there, yeah, with Wood up top. So it was a bit of a different approach to things, but it felt like very balanced. That being said, I think we all kind of came away with, we think Nuno's going to stick with what he does, right? He's going to be confident with that back four. He's going to be confident with that 4-2-3-1 like Greg referenced. So and I think Greg even put the exact team that Wolfie put out there. He put that up when he was kind of configuring things on FOTMob. So, but yeah, I kind of thought Murado in as well. Put Murado in on the left, or in the center rather. Milenkovic on the right, Murillo on the left. It gives you a little bit of height. So it gives you a little bit of height to defend the set pieces, gives you a little bit of height when you're trying to get set pieces yourself on the offensive side or on the opposing side. And I think that gives us a slight advantage there. But at the same time, I could see the justification, and it seems like that may be where they head. I like the idea of having a tenacious guy on the right who's just, his work rate's insane, like you said, even for 60, 65 minutes. And you got to be concerned about, okay, well, the Anderson coverage, because both he and Gibbs White have been, I think they're still a little bit unhealthy. They can kind of cover each other. So if Gibbs White does need to come out, Anderson can switch in. You just, with that lack of midfield depth right now, it's a little bit scary. But yeah, Lang on the left with that pace coming at Walker, who we all think has lost a step. You referenced it as well when it came to how Alanga just, oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah. 100%. So you put that on there.
Yeah, I was surprised that he didn't retire from England after the Euros. I thought Walker was definitely going to retire. Trippier retired, but he's still there. And I think you're right, Chief. I think Aina ripped him a new one when we played against him last season. We're running out of time. I want to ask you before we do that, who's your player of the season so far, Chief?
I mean, Sells has really been. I don't think Sells gets enough credit, but for me, it's Milenkovic. Like he allows Murillo to be Murillo. He gives him the right support. That I would say that pairing. Who's better than them in the Premier League? Those two. Like, you can argue Saliba and Gabriel. You can make arguments for others, but they're definitely in the top three, and they're great. So I think he has made all the difference in the world for this team. Those are two very important positions where it's been a carousel since they've been promoted. Who's in that spot with Boley and Nakate? And we've had a million goalies, including our American Matt Turner. So it's nice to have some stability in those two positions. And I think that's really, those two have really calmed things down in the back and allowed for us to be in sixth, which is incredible.
It's great to hear you reference Sells, because I've kind of backed him up quite a bit. And in other places and other commenters on other podcasts have gone in quite studs up on Matt Sells quite a bit. And I think it's been very harsh and very uncalled for, and he's pulling off some world-class saves now, and a big reason as to why we are sixth.
And he plays the ball well too. Now look, if I could wave a wand and have Bree Samba back here, I would do it in a second. But Sells is the best one that we've had. I mean, since Henderson, so he's really stabilized that position. It feels like he's a Forest guy now. So I'm happy to have him.
Fantastic. Okay, we still just have time as we go slightly over. The fourth officials put the board up. We've got an extra couple of minutes that we can just dip into for this.
Name that grandmother.
Oh, yes. So here it comes. Marmite, love it or hate it?
I
Know what it is?
love it. I don't know what we're doing here, but love it. Sure.
How am I cooking your steak?
Medium rare.
What's your favorite cheese?
Burrata.
What's the best sandwich?
I'm in Chicago. I'll say an Italian beef.
And in honor of this segment, what are your grandmother's names?
I had a wonderful Irish nana. Her name was Mary Agnes McDonald.
Amazing. Love that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then on my dad's side, she died when I was so little. I'm actually blanking on her name right now. She died when I was like 3. So I never really knew her. Yeah, we weren't close with that. This is embarrassing. I can't even think of her name right now. We called her Grammy. Her name was Grammy to me, but I can't remember what her actual first name was. I feel guilty. But
no,
Mary Agnes has my heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
amazing.
You know what it is? It's such a wacky segment, but one thing I've noticed since we've been doing it, when I ask what are your grandmother's names, the person that I'm asking, all of a sudden their eyes just widen and their smile appears.
Yeah.
There's something about grandmothers, right? That it's just they're a special thing. I don't know what it is.
She would be in my starting 11 every time. She was the best. So I loved my nana. Mary Agnes McDonald was one of the greatest people I've ever known. That's
Amazing.
awesome.
We have just gone over time, and it's been a fantastic hour. I can sit and talk for a long time to you, Chief. Want to give you the floor to tell us anything you want to tell us as some closing thoughts. What are you up to next? Anything the guys should be listening out for podcast-wise?
Yeah, I mean, you can check out the Barstool Sports platform. We have a soccer show called Pitch Picks, which, look, I'm not a tactics guy. It's never going to be some hard-hitting analysis, but I do think we have good banter and good bits, and we have a good time. So if you got people want to look at that, that'd be great. But really, I feel like the Forest community, the internet community, and when I was over there, it's been so good to me, you guys now included. So thanks for having me on, and just, you Reds, let's get a dub today.
Amazing. Richard Spray in Oklahoma, over to you for some final thoughts.
No, so I just appreciate Chief taking the time. I know it's not easy. I'm sure he's got a lot going on, like many people in that media space. It's a constant churning out work and doing things and getting stuff out there. So I appreciate you making the time and sacrificing. And I apologize as a Lions fan for last week. But hey, greener pastures coming, buddy. Eberflus is out. Eberflus is out. So
Eberflus is out. You don't have to apologize. We're doing it to ourselves. We're doing it to ourselves. So.
But you might steal Ben Johnson. So who knows? Or Mike Vrabel.
I would love Vrabel. I don't think the Bears, they're going to mess this up. If we're being honest, they're going to
I hope not.
Up. So I'm not getting my hopes up, but I am, while you guys are a division rival, because you've been such losers for my entire life, I am happy for you in a way. If I'm trying to be a big person here,
thank you.
I'd rather see you guys do well than the other two teams in the division.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chief. Thanks so much for being with us today. Richard, my co-host over in Oklahoma. We are traveling to Manchester to claim 3 points tonight against the champions. So have belief. If you are traveling, then travel safely. If you're watching, then cheer from your sofas and make sure you make some noise for the Super Reds. This has been the one with Barstool Chief, and we'll see you very soon.